Thank you. Thanks, Helen. Thanks, Anne. Thanks, Lucy. All the technical people. Good to see everybody. Or know that you're there, even if I can't see you. So I wanted to take a moment to say what the inspiration for this workshop has been. I kind of want to dedicate it to one of my many teachers. And I'm going to share his book cover in a moment, which is where a lot of the ideas in this seminar come from. He died last year, and so I'm really pleased to dedicate this to him. I'll share his book cover. Break writer's block now, how to demolish it forever and establish a productive working schedule in one afternoon, a proven system, by Gerald Mundis. This is the book which I take a lot of inspiration from. It's some years old. It was written in the 80s, but it's still available on Kindle. And I am going to be working from the first part of it. Which is a sort of overview of what writer's block is. I'll leave it up there because the second inspiration that I had for this workshop was in talking to Anne, the chief executive of the Steve Sinnott. We were talking about, let me stop that share. We were talking about what it is about these workshops that is special. And this space, it kind of gives us a time out from everything, really, and from every day, from the everyday. And how when we get a bit of time out, we often become quite joyfully productive. We often become we get freer. So I wanted to use this space to experiment with what happens when we let go of some of the things that block us when we want to write. So this hour is about bringing some of that relaxation where there's no objective, there's nothing for you, there's no objective, you don't have to produce anything. You just have to be here, you've shown up. And it's about bringing some of that relaxation into that you can take into your everyday writing lives. So now I'm going to give you a writing prompt, and you're going to write for 5 minutes. And this is not for sharing. Nobody will see this piece of writing or hear it unless you want them to. So first of all, let's breathe. Let's breathe. Breathe and relax. And when I ask you to write, I want you to write for 5 minutes and keep your hand. The only thing you're supposed to do is keep your hand moving, or hands if you're using a keyboard. Either is fine, keyboard or pen and pad. Just keep your hand moving, forming words, forming sentences one after the other. And your prompt is, the train sped through the landscape, ... .5 minutes, I'll time you. Next thing to do is count the words that you've written. Count the number of words that you've written. Just 1, 2, 3. So you now know how many words you can write in 5 minutes. And if you have, told you'd learn something from this, and say you're writing a memoir, just say you're writing a memoir, and in 5 minutes you can write, I wrote 126 words, which my excuse is that I had to get up and go to the pen case because my pencil ran out of lead. It's 126 words. Say a memoir is going to be about 1,000 times that. That's 1,000 5 minutes, but there are 12 5 minutes in every hour. So really, it's not that many hours, really. I mean, I could do it within a year, probably. So that's one thing. However, that's without any pressure. So without any pressure, you can write however many words you just wrote. You can do that in 5 minutes. And it's a question of putting one word after another, forming a sentence, putting another word, another sentence after that, building up to a paragraph, and it just goes on. And that's all you have to do. So you can do it. Even if you think you're blocked, there's nothing about you in this moment that cannot write. You can write. You just proved it to yourself. So what's writer's block about? Now, this session is really about writer's block and what it is. So we've done one exercise. We're going to do another exercise in a moment. And then I'm going to give you information or some ideas from Gerald Mundis's book. And then I'm going to have a little question and answer session, and then we're going to come back to the trains, which should be a bit of fun. So we're going to look at what writer's block is about. This is another exercise that nobody's going to see. I want you to write something 12 times. You're going to write, a reason I cannot write is. Another reason I cannot write is. A reason I cannot write is. And you're going to do that 12 times. Do it in the same way you did the first exercise. Do it without thinking too much. And keep your hand moving or your type keyboard moving. No one's going to see it. I did this yesterday in preparation for this. I did this yesterday. And I found it really helpful. So it actually made me cry. There was a moment where, oh God, that's it. It's about reflection. It's about looking at ourselves a little bit. If you get stuck, make something up. My number 7 from yesterday was, a reason I cannot write is that elephants are chasing me around the living room. So make it up. Just, in order to keep going, just make it up and do it. I want you to do it 12 times. And I'm going to give you a few minutes, 5 minutes again, I think. Could be a little bit more. Okay, if you have 12, I want you to write one more. Even if it's really hard to get it, really hard to find it. Just write one more. Great, okay, well done. Sometimes that takes a lot of courage, and hopefully you will have learned something about what's going on behind not writing. My last one yesterday was heartbreaking. It was something like, I have too much experience with failure to believe in a future. So, but this is the key. Some of these things are facts and some of them are beliefs. So I'm going to share the book with you again, some reading, and bear in mind the phrase, I think, therefore I am. So, in fact, there's a chapter called that. My mind creates the world. I think a Buddhist would say, your mind creates the world. So beliefs are really powerful when it comes to what we think we can do and what we think we can't do. So when I found that one in myself yesterday, I really believed it. I really believed that to be true. And I don't today. I gave myself a talking to. So you can talk yourself out of these things. So block, what Mundis says is block is wholly in your mind. It's a choice not to write, not an inability. It's a choice made in response to your cognitions, your thoughts and beliefs, and nearly always masked by excuses, by reasons such as those you listed just now. The same is true of not having enough. The same is true of not having enough time to write, which is simply another form of block, albeit a subtle one. We know something about time planning for our jobs. We know that if we want to do something, we can make time to do it. So not having enough time is a belief rather than an actual fact. And this is the bit that I find really interesting about this book. Your subconscious accepts every conscious thought or belief you have as literal truth. One of its major functions is to prove the validity of our thoughts. This helps us stay sane. Let's say, to illustrate, that I believe life sucks. If in the face of this belief, I continually run into people who are glad to see me, if my work is praised and respected, if I'm loved and valued by my family and friends, then I won't stay sane very long, because my experiences will directly contradict my belief structure. And that's an untenable position for anyone. So something must change here. You'd think I would resolve the conflict by changing my belief to reflect my experience, that I'd start thinking, oh, life is pretty nice. But and I would add here, without consciously thinking about it, we rarely do that. What nearly always happens is that our subconscious will arrange for us to experience only what will support and prove our beliefs, what we think. Without even being aware of what I'm doing, I will take other streets where I won't encounter people who are glad to see me or be too rushed or tired to smile back at them. I'll become sloppy or late with my etc., etc. And as a result, my experiences will begin to support my beliefs again. When I first read this, I thought, I don't think I believe that. But when you look at writing, if my thought or belief is I'm blocked, I can't write, then my subconscious will dutifully provide me with the appropriate experience. That's its job. And so what about the reasons on your list? At least some of those are real. You do have 2 kids and a full-time job, for example. An absolute statement of fact is indeed real. And that you have 2 children and a job is a fact. But the statement you formulate because of that fact, I don't have enough time, is a belief. Or it will never be published is a belief. How can you know it will never be published? Recognizing beliefs for what they are, simply beliefs, is a major step forward. You don't need years of therapy to overcome them. Well, that's a relief. So this is, yes, that's such an interesting, I find that such an interesting concept, that we will organize the world to confirm what we believe. I mean, it has ramifications beyond writing, but I found it really interesting with writing. I thought I'd stop here. Are we 4:30? Yes, stop here to see if there were any questions before we go on. So I'll move into the next part, which is specifically, although it can help anybody. If you have to write for a living, some of the things that go through our minds when we sit down to write might be these. Along with perfectionism, which we literally haven't got time to go into today, the professional writer often has targets to meet, both personal and product-wise, and you know, there is this aspect that has been picked up. It's quite confronting. It confronts us. I'm slow, I'm avoidant, I'm whatever. So I'm going to share my list, or a list, actually. This is a Mundis and me working together. I'm going to share our list. So this is something, when I sit down, no, that's not it. Here it is. Okay. When I sit down to write, this is what I find myself wanting. This is my want, what I want from writing. I want to be admired. I want to be on the front page of the Times book review, the cover of the People magazine. This is Mundus. I need to meet our targets for engagement. I need the money for next month's rent. I want to get rich. I want to get my degree. I want to make a better world. I need to get our research funding. I want to be immortal. I want to make everyone laugh and cry. I want to show them how sensitive I am. And I want all of my ex-lovers to say, I should have stayed with her. These are the kind of things that Mundis calls the baggage train. When we sit down to write, when you remember at the beginning, all that all you needed to do was put words on paper, and you did it. There was nothing else dragging behind those words and sentences. But sometimes, and often, when we sit down to write, we're trying to pay the rent, be immortal, stick it to those exes. You know, we're showing them, we've got to meet targets. And it's serious. Some of it's serious stuff. We've got to meet targets. We've got to show that we're worth what we're being paid. We've got to be coherent. We've all kinds of things. And this is what Mundus calls the baggage train. And this is the point at which I'm going to just disappear 1 minute, and then I'm going to bring my train. Okay, so here's the little train. Here you are. You came, the train is speeding through the landscape, and here's the engine. It's going really fast, and your only job is to make sure there's enough coal in there, coffee or whatever, for it to go. And it's going along, it's speeding along, but oh, wait a minute. Here comes the baggage car. So here's here's the targets that you have to meet, and the oh, and wait, here's the people. Oh, here's the people you have to please. Okay, here's the exes and the bosses and everything. And so the train's getting slower and slower and slower, and it's going to come off the track. Oh, it's getting it wants to unhook. So here it's getting slower and slower and slower. Oh, hang on a minute. Here's another load of people that we've got to, and it's getting slow. Actually, it's going to start going backwards. It's going to start going backwards, and it's going to stop. Okay. The baggage train is slowing you down every time you sit down to write, and you have to do all these different things. You have to meet your research targets. The baggage train is slowing you down. So this, I'm going to share the screen again. The big killer, number 3, the baggage train. And there's the examples. There's some of the other examples. With all these chained to you, one after the other, stretching off into the distance like a great baggage train, you're not going to get very far. You may never get out of the station, because you're not sitting down on a Monday morning to write for 3 hours or an hour or 20 minutes. You're sitting down to become rich, to become famous, to enlighten the world, to get your degree. I like this. If Tolstoy had sat down and said, today I'm going to write world literature, he would have slumped over his desk, paralyzed with fear. The items may motivate you. The items on that list may motivate you. They may be your underlying reasons for wanting to write, and that's fine, but you cannot accomplish a single one of them on any given day. All you can accomplish is that day's work, which is the simple act of putting words on paper. Nothing else is possible in that moment. So there's something for me that is a real relief in that where at the moment that I'm writing, it's just me and the page, me and the sentence. The one sentence after the other. That's all I have to do. I don't have to change the world. So there's now more time for questions. There's a kind of natural predator in the psyche, actually. There's a sort of the story of Persephone and Demeter, that the young girl is an explorer. That writing is a kind of creative exploration. And in that myth, a Greek myth, she gets captured and spends time in the underworld. You probably know it, but she has to go to the underworld, and she's not allowed back if she's eaten something. And that's what our kind of writing rhythm often does to us, or perhaps any project. Like, we get captured, the young creative spirit in us gets kind of captured. And one of the best ways out of that is laughter. In an older version of that story, there's a really obscene goddess who comes along and does a really risque dance and makes even Demeter laugh. So, and when she laughs, she gets an idea that she can find her daughter. So this is a sort of metaphor for the creative process, that we lose it, and a bit of a laugh will sometimes bring it back. If we can smile at ourselves, it will sometimes bring it back. So I thought I'd finish by reading you a poem. So this is about a map, and it's by a writer, a poet called, hold on, I need to get the name right. It's a Czech, he was a Czech scientist, he was an immunologist. And this is about thinking you know where you're going, and the wonder of that, sort of the power of the mind, really. I'm just looking for his name, Miroslav Horub. So he says, Albert Szent-Györgyi, who knew a thing or two about maps by which life moves somewhere or another, used to tell this story from the war, through which history moves somewhere or another. The young lieutenant of a small Hungarian detachment in the Alps sent out a reconnaissance unit into the icy wastes. At once it began to snow. It snowed for 2 days and the unit did not return. The lieutenant suffered. He had sent his own men to their deaths. But on the 3rd day, the unit returned. Where had they been? How did they find their way back? Yes, they said, we considered ourselves lost and we waited for the end. Then one of us found a map in his pocket. That reassured us. We pitched camp, waited for the snow to stop, and then with the map, we found our bearings, and here we are. The lieutenant asked to see this remarkable map and had a good look at it. It was a map not of the Alps, but of the Pyrenees. Goodbye. I love the little goodbye at the end of that. It's so sweet. In other words, yeah, there you go. Nothing is what it seems. So thank you very much for coming and being with me for this hour.
Thank you very much, Josie. Thank you so much. I think we've all found it really inspirational. I've enjoyed the hour to reflect. I've enjoyed time to just get on with some writing. I actually enjoyed writing the 12 excuses as well, but then that made me realise how ridiculous they were. So thank you so much.
Thank you for sharing that, Helen. That's brilliant. Yeah.
Thank you, everybody, so much for joining us today.